We are back for the second Baschamania episode of the week with Coach Kevin Dresser. How are you, man?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I am super excited for this show. David Carr is a good friend of mine, and we were talking after last week. We were just talking about a little bit before we started recording about before the scuffle. There's obviously all this chaos everywhere, medical forfeits, people not wrestling. And being somebody who likes to promote the sport, hype the sport up, me and Willie did a show last week talking about it. And I'm like, you know what? Willie and I said it on our show, we're very biased. People who want to market or hype the sport, you're looking at it just from the lens of a fan. And I thought you handled the press conference before the scuffle phenomenally. I wish everybody would do that. So I said, you're the perfect guy to come on this week. So I want to talk about that, some other stuff. I guess we'll start right there. For those maybe who aren't really paying attention, last week before the scuffle, you came out, and I had never seen somebody do this. You grabbed your phone. You said, before anybody asked any questions, you went through the entire lineup, said who was not going, who was going, why they weren't going. And that was that. It was a non-issue. I know there's coaches out there sensitive to injuries and this and that, but I loved that. So for you, what led to you coming right out with kind of the laundry list medical report, just like we see the NFL? And do you think that should be more the norm?
It probably, thinking back on it now, what probably led to it is we usually have a weekly press conference on Wednesdays, and we didn't have one the Wednesday before because we were in the holidays. So we were getting ready for the scuffle. My phone was blowing up from reporters to fans and everything. And so I guess maybe that particular day I made a decision like, all right, I'm just going to tell them who's wrestling, who's not wrestling, why they're wrestling, why they're not wrestling, and just get it over with. Because I think I take it as a good problem because wrestling continues to get more popular, and there's a lot more people that want to know what's going on. And I see it completely from the fans' perspective, and there's a coach's perspective that's different. But I don't know. I'm usually just a straight up guy, and I'm gonna, whether you like it or you don't like it, I'm gonna tell you who's going and who's not going.
And, you kind of hit the nail on the head with my next question, which is there is two sides to this. There is the side where the coaches are very much just, all I care about is my team, my athletes winning NCAAs in March, and that's it. That's their sole focus. And then there's obviously coaches, and I think you're more on this side, that come from the fan side and say, I put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago that was along the lines of like, if you're a wrestler, if you're a coach, and you're asking people to come to your camp, come to your clinic, buy seats in the arena, and then you're not telling them what's going on, it's like you can't have it both ways. If you're not asking for anything, great. But if you're asking for stuff, it's better to enlighten the fans. And I'm sure for you, it's not always, I don't know if it was easy or not, but this week, there wasn't a lot of things. The injuries, for example, seem black and white. I know sometimes there's this paranoia like, oh my gosh, if he knows that his right calf is a little out of shape, they might come and try to take his legs out. Like for you, is that just a thing where it's like, look, an injury is what an injury is?
Yeah, I think it's a probably a much broader subject uh, than maybe what people think. I think we live within a rules system in wrestling that makes it easy for guys to medical forfeit out, and it makes it easy for guys to not wrestle because here we have this great product. It's called the dual meet, and look at the dual meets we've had this year. Just look at the dual meets we've been involved this year. I mean, Penn State, Iowa, Cornell, Wisconsin. We've been in some great dual meets. And besides we're competitive and for bragging rights, they really don't mean anything. Okay, they don't mean anything. If they meant something and there was some skin in the game, coaches would be wrestling guys. Just like, hey, the NFL, it means something to lose. So you might see a team that if they clinch the playoffs, they might be at the year they might rest guys for 1 week.
Yeah.
But if they have a chance to get home field advantage, they're going to put everybody out there. We don't have that system here. We don't have, the dual meet's the greatest product we have. The NCAA tournament's the greatest product we have. But the dual meet is the second greatest product. And really for the average fan, if we really want to grow this thing, it's a lot easier to coach a new fan into a dual meet than watching the 3-day NCAA tournament. So I think that's what leads a lot to. And then you throw in some goofy rules I mean, our qualification system compared to when I started was great because we used to have automatic qualifiers. And so now every year you got to earn a spot to the nationals. But what they've done is they put in a bunch of dumb rules that that promote coaches to medical forfeit out of tournaments. And so that's what we're seeing is, it's just making it easy for kids. If a kid's really that injured, I just don't wrestle him in the tournament, instead of bringing him in and then medical forfeit fit him out. That's just and I'm not throwing coaches under the bus because, hey, I was the first guy 3-4 years ago that got my head chopped off because I did my last chance open just to make a point.
Yeah.
I just did it intentionally. Like I'm gonna challenge every dumb rule that they've got out there all in one weekend, all in one day. And so when you ask that question about what's my philosophy on injuries, not injuries, there's times and places when you got to sit kids. There's no question. Yeah. But it makes it easy to sit kids when, like we really want to beat Arizona State on Sunday. But what happens if we don't? Well, we go from 4th ranked to maybe 6th ranked or something. And at the end of the year, that 6th rank doesn't mean anything. In fact, we don't even recognize, I think this might be the first year that we actually recognize a conference champ in the Big 12 in the dual meet season. This will be the first year. So there's just been this undervalued aspect of dual meets. And I think most Division I coaches would agree with that.
I agree too. And, speaking of medical forfeits, I got to imagine it's frustrating. I think what you said is the right move. If a guy can't wrestle, he can't wrestle the tournament. I got to imagine as a coach, it's frustrating when you're sending guys like the Scuffle, for example. The Scuffle in Midlands was a disaster of medical forfeits. And you have guys there, and I think you had both guys at 33, like wrestling back, trying to get matches. And how aggravating is it as a coach when you want your guys to get those matches and then it's medical forfeit season?
Yeah, it is frustrating because you do want to get guys matches. There's no question. And again, there are people out there going to say, well, you did it back in 2019 or 20, that COVID season. And I'm like, you're darn right I did, because, what's even dumber is you can medical forfeit back then. You can medical forfeit to your teammate and you got to win for it. And you didn't get a loss for it if you're on the other end. And they changed that rule real quick because right. of that particular event. But the fact that you can medical forfeit out and it doesn't cost you anything. So if you sign up for a tournament and you decide you don't want to wrestle for 7th or 8th, you don't have any, there's no loss to you. And I don't know when that rule changed, but I just don't think it's a very good rule because it just gives everybody a chance to pull out. Because it doesn't cost you anything. And why go wrestle a match if you might lose it, and then my seed might go down a little bit at the NCAA tournament. So there's just way too much gaming going on right now.
It seems like the more coaches I talk to, the more everybody is against this. Are there talks behind the scenes to end these stupid rules?
So the whole reason that I scheduled when I did the Last Chance Open the very first year I got here, it's just because I've always carried a big roster and I like to get my backup guys matches in January and February. And there's very few opportunities in February, especially to get guys tournaments. Guys matches. So that's part of the reason I started it. Well, what I found out was people were coming using our event to get their RPI number, which was 15. And so I went to the NCAA convention every July and they put me on a committee. And I specifically wanted to be on that committee. And I actually chaired that committee for 2 summers. And I put together 3 or 4 points. And I said, number one, this medical forfeit thing's ridiculous. And the fact that you can get a quality win against your opponent or against your teammate is ridiculous, because all you've got to do is have your backup guy go take a dive, and then your starter gets a quality win, and it helps them at the nationals. And so I actually don't know where that went. I mean, the NCAA were there. I put all the work in 2 summers in a row, and I was very frustrated that nothing came of it. So maybe now that there's, it seems to become more glaring every year that this system is flawed in that area. And there's a lot of really good things about, the qualification system. I think the coaches love it overall compared to what, the automatic qualifiers we had, 15 years ago or 12 years ago. But this is something I think is very fixable. I don't know what it takes to get it fixed. The NCAA makes me scratch my head every day in how they do things. And it seems to be very political. 8 years ago, we went to a convention and we had 90% of the coaches that got up and voted that the dual meets were going to happen, and the dual meets were going to mean something, and there was going to be some carryover from the dual meets into the NCAA tournament. And then mysteriously, the rule got changed because a couple big time schools, ADs, went and raised Cain, and all that work we put in for 2 or 3 summers didn't happen. So that's kind of the long-winded version of why the NCAA doesn't make these changes to make our sport a little better.
Do you think there should be a dual meet championship, like separate?
I think it'd be great. I think it would
Yeah.
be. I think they could do it, maybe a week afterwards, or talk about breaking it up into a couple seasons. I mean, we had a pretty good model in place that was ready to go. Everybody thought it was going to pass, and then all of a sudden, like I said, there was an 11th hour 180 on it, and it just completely went away. I mean, we even got it presented to us at the convention what it was going to look like, how many points we're going to carry over to the NCAA tournament. We're going to crown a dual meet champion before the NCAA tournament, 3 weeks before, and they had a really good setup, I think, but it just didn't. The right people didn't want it to go.
It's funny how much you kind of mentioned this, people playing within the subset of the rules. And it's funny, I don't know if you caught it on the show with Willie, but he said he did the research where the average All-American wrestles 10 and a half less matches now, which is almost 29% less than a decade ago. So we see all of our stars less. Do you think that's a result of the product of wrestling changing? Do you think that's a result of, you see these young kids that are wrestling year round nonstop? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Very definitely less matches being wrestled than, I think, gosh, when I was a senior, I think I wrestled 39 or 42 matches or something, and that was kind of the norm back then, but it is much less. I think, one thing, and boy, I scratch my head and can't figure it out because I know we do less work than we did back then. But the amount of injuries that these kids sustain, it just kind of blows my mind. I mean, wrestling for Coach Gable, it was no secret you live wrestled 5 days a week for at least an hour. And we might live wrestle 2 days a week right now, like if we during weeks that we compete, and we have more injuries, and it's not even that long. It might be 30, 35 minutes. It's frustrating. So I do think as a coach, I don't know if kids are bigger, stronger, faster, or they've been wrestling too long, or I don't know. I wish I could give you an answer, because I think that's part of the reason that coaches are a little gun shy, and that it seems like we have a lot more injuries. And so, why go put your kid out there in something that really doesn't mean anything? And in the NFL, you're going to have to strap it on every week if you've got a sore shoulder, if you want your team to go to the playoffs. And we don't have an incentive to do that, where kids, there's more incentive for kids. They might get out there a little bit more too, but sometimes every now and then you'll just get a kid that he just ain't going to wrestle because he don't feel good that day. And there's got to be some skin in the game for them too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's also a whole nother conversation, but you also have the freestyle scene that so many aspire to be a world Olympic champ. And it's like, okay, well, if I can't wrestle here, all summer, whatever. Switching gears a little bit, guy that I love, David Carr, very, very grateful to help him. NIL has enabled that. I'm curious on your perspective of NIL so far as it's rolled out over the past year or two from a coaching perspective.
Well, I don't think it really matters what your opinion of it is. It's here to stay. I've heard that the NCAA is going to come in and actually put, some rules in place, because I think it was so new to them that they didn't even know how to legislate it. So, I think it's pretty evident it's the wild, wild west out there. And, I think football, there's schools giving kids $1 million right now. Some of those SEC schools that we're hearing, but it's just here to stay. It'll be interesting to see what kind of guidelines they put in and how they're going to govern it a little bit. But based on that, that Allsted case that came through, I'm sure the NCAA is very gun shy to challenge anything where a kid's getting a financial benefit right now. So I'll be curious to see how they try to chaperone it a little bit.
Yeah, no, for sure. Speaking of David Carr, how much does it mean to you to have a guy like that? In my eyes, he's a true selfless leader. It's one reason why I try to help him where I can. I got to imagine as a coach, viewing that kid the same way has to be a good thing.
No, he's a great guy to have in the room. He absolutely loves the sport. His energy is infectious. It's really kind of been nice this year to have him up at 165 because only time the guy gets grumpy is when he cuts weight, and he's not cutting a lot of weight this year. So his mojo doesn't change. But when he was at 157, those last 48 hours, he was a bear to be around. His personality completely changed, which a lot of wrestlers do when they cut a lot of weight. But he's really excited to continue. The great thing about David Carr is he just loves to come in and get better every day. Like he wants to learn. He wants to learn all these moves and hit all these moves. And I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he's got the toughest and the deepest weight in the nation. And I said, that's
Easily.
cool because if you go win, they should just give you OW for winning. So I got him greedy, and hopefully he wants all the trophies.
Yeah. Another guy too, Paniro Johnson, he's kind of jumped on everybody's radar. He had an exciting win over Gomez, close loss to Yanni, close win over Van Ness. He's got Parco this weekend. What are your expectations for Parco moving forward? After he has all these exciting matches, and it's still so early, obviously, in his college career, what are your expectations so far for him?
For Paniro?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I think the sky's the limit for that guy. Most impressive thing about Paniro, he's obviously crazy athletic. Crazy athletic. I mean, he might be faster than David Carr, and I didn't think I'd ever say that. He's just so explosive. The thing that's been the most surprising, and I'm actually very surprised, is his just attention to detail with everything he does. I mean, he got a 395 this semester. His weight cuts have been great. His diet, he changed a lot of things because he didn't have a great summer competing and found out he had sickle cell anemia, so he had to kind of redo his diet and change the kid's diet when they're 19 years old isn't the easiest thing in the world because we're all creatures of habit. And the ability just to train harder and to get tougher in the room. Now he's not there yet. I think there's a lot of room for growth there, but he's very calculated, and he's just got that. I say you got to have that it factor where you just, he's got that swagger where he thinks he can beat anybody at any time. I remember the day that we wrestled Wisconsin. He goes, "Coach, nobody believes me, but I'm going to beat Gomez today." He told me that. And I said, "Okay, Panel, I would have bet him $1 million that you're not beating Gomez. I'm just being honest. Were you good enough to beat him? Yeah, but are you going to step out there? Because Gomez is going to try to take your head off, dude. Yeah. He's going to try to choke you, flip you over." And sure enough, he did. And I have to admit, I thought he was going over there. But when he weathered that storm, you could see a guy that just slowly got momentum and all of that swagger that he had. And all that work he put in, he felt great for 7 minutes. And so, he's going to have some, I've said it before, he's going to have some freshman moments. There's probably he's going to throw a clunker or two in there probably yet. But man, there's a guy there that we're super excited about. I mean, he's like, "I'm winning 4 titles, dude. Like, I'm winning 4 titles." And some kids say that, and, you don't, to be quite honest, you don't believe it much as a coach. You like it that they're saying it, but he thinks he can win 4 titles. So he already proved me wrong once. So he might prove me wrong again.
It's funny too, because as soon as he beat Gomez, I put a tweet out like, "Man, tell me this kid's not going to be a bracket buster." And people are like right out of the gate, like, "What do you mean bracket buster? He's a top challenger." Like, yeah, no crap, but he's a freshman. He's going to take some losses. You don't know what his seed's going to end up being, but it was funny to see that both sides were like, yeah, obviously it's so early. He's got a long season. It's also funny because, so one thing I like doing in the podcast is I try to listen to other videos before I have somebody on and try to bring stuff up. And one of the things that you just said a couple days ago, or maybe it was last week, you were talking in a press conference about how he never even won a state title. And you mentioned the media availability, how much tougher it is to win a high school title, state title, and PA versus Iowa. Did you catch any blowback for that? I mean, you don't even have any PA bias people can really come at you with.
No, I haven't had any yet, but I probably will be. So, yeah. No. Paniro graduated high school at 17 years old. And that was part of the reason that I sat him down when we recruited him. I said, "Hey, I think you need a gray shirt here.
Yeah.
You're just young. You're just young. I mean, the kid's just 19 years old right now."
Yeah, it's crazy. And coaches, coaches have you guys ranked fourth. Intermat, I think, has you fifth, but you've got a very, very good and a very young team. I think there's only like two seniors in the lineup. And you also said somewhere in another press conference about how much wrestlers get better that first year of college. And that was one reason why you're so high in Paniro right now. I was like, if he's having all this success and keeps having it, when you do have that young team, guys like Casey, Paniro, does that change your overall perspective of a team? Whether it's the dual meets, whether it's getting guys ready for March, when you have a team that's older at times or younger at times, does that kind of change things, or does the philosophy stay the same?
I think the freshmen are going to be freshmen at some point. We haven't seen it much yet, but we're really kind of getting in the heart of the season now. Like, I mean, we got 3 dual meets in the next 8 days, and then we're off the next weekend. And then we got 7 dual meets in like 19 days.
Crazy.
So then you start grinding, and you start having a lot of weigh-ins, and in high school you can go 4 or 5 weeks if you're that good as Casey Swiderski and not even get anybody that even remotely challenges you. So, I'm really curious to see, especially how Casey and Paniro do down the stretch. That'll tell the tale. I know they've got the ability to be really good down at the end of the year. And, the veterans, more guys like Marcus and David, I think you see, you're going to, hopefully you see more steady performances out of them. Because when Marcus Coleman was young, he was a roller coaster. He was all over the place. And you're starting to see a fairly consistent guy right now. So, but the freshmen have really been good energy to our room because we recruited a big freshman class. We've got 3 or 4 that are really good that aren't in the lineup this year because they're not ready. But they've really ignited the room, and the room's competitive. And these guys haven't taken a backseat to the David Carrs. And so it's a great room right now.
It's funny you mentioned roller coaster. I want to bring up a quote you said 2 years ago, I think it was, after the Oklahoma State dual loss. You referenced what you told your kids. You were not happy with their lifestyle choices, other things. And you said the quote that you told them, which was, coaching isn't about holding people accountable. It's teaching them how to hold themselves accountable. And I'm curious, if you were to fast forward 2 years now and take the group you have, and if you kind of think about that same, the lifestyle decisions, the team camaraderie, how the team is, do you think they've gone more that direction that you want?
The older guys definitely have. We have a couple buzzwords in our locker room, and one of them is trust. And so you just can't hold their hand forever. At some point, you have to be able to trust them. So, never have to worry about Marcus Coleman, any of the things away from the room. He's completely a professional. Younger Bastida, complete professional away from the room. I don't have to worry about their conduct. I don't have to worry about their weight cut. I don't have to worry about what time to go to bed. None of that stuff. They learned it. They probably screwed it up when they were young. They learned it, and they're having success now because they're applying. David Carr, Julian Broderson, those guys. I don't worry about those guys making weight. I don't worry about those guys feeling bad when they make weight. Every now and then you're going to come off the scale, maybe early in the season, and you could be an older guy and you just don't feel great. But they figured it out really quick, and they just kind of keep getting better as the year goes around. Now the freshmen, those are the guys that they kind of know it all, and they got to fail a little bit to get it right. I'm curious to see Casey Swiderski's a stud, but I'm curious to see how he kind of adapts to the next 2 months and see how he kind of deals with that grind. Because what makes Casey good is he thinks he's invincible, but what makes Casey bad is he thinks he's invincible.
Right.
And so, he's a hardhead when it comes to the weight management. So, you'll find out real quick you can't fake it if you've got corners on it.
Yeah, and one thing that David was telling me that he loves about you in the room is, the inspirational videos before practice, sharing motivational quotes. Have you found ways to, or how really have you found ways to connect with these athletes that are such a different group? For so long, you think like 18 years you coached high school, then you have, college kids now younger college kids. It's kind of like you said, a younger freshman class. How has connecting to these athletes in the way you found helped you? There's no doubt you've rebuilt that Iowa State program. And it seems like a lot of the success stems from these relationships you have. I mean, it's funny. There's so much going on in a coach's mind that I feel like it's very easy to probably slip little details here and there. You didn't slip knowing that Paniro had a 3.95 GPA. Like that was off the tip of your tongue. And I'm sure there's a million other things that just aren't coming up right now. But how have you felt, or how have you found these ways to connect with these athletes that's really helped you to rebuild this program?
I just you have to evolve, and especially being an older coach, you have to evolve and get to their level. And so I've, especially since I've been to Iowa State, is I've been probably didn't do it as much at other places, just because didn't have maybe the technology that we had in the room. So we have we have 4 big screen TVs in the room. I said, well, why don't we just use these? So between motivational videos, just a little bitty clips here and there, we do Twitter a lot. We'll pull some stuff off Twitter. We'll pull stuff Instagram, TikTok.
Are you finding these TikTok videos?
Yeah, usually I'll have people send it to me. It's amazing how many people will send it to me.
Yep.
And so I subscribe on my Twitter feed to a lot of different motivational people that send that stuff out. But that's what they do. So I found those, and so it just, I get that feed stuff all the time, and so I'll probably every other day get one, and I'll email it to my director of operations, and she'll have it ready to go that day at 3:45 when we get going. And sometimes it's just goofy, funny stuff. Just sometimes I'll get some stuff from guys on the team that are funny videos of other guys on the team, just to have a little fun, where they make fun of each other and in a good way, in a good light, and kind of try to keep the room a little bit lighter. And then some days it's really motivational, and some days it's educational, and just kind of rotate it around. I think we probably do it 4 days a week.
And it's funny because as much as you do well for the team, I've also heard individually, and I'm curious how crucial it has been for you to meet a guy where he's at. You talk about different guys we're referencing, Paniro, a gray shirt freshman, Casey, a true freshman, David Carr, an NCAA champ junior, Marcus Coleman, all these different age groups. How crucial has it been for you to find ways to kind of meet where they're at and meet their needs? Versus some things are team wide. I got to imagine a lot of other things are very individual based.
We put together a really good staff, I think, here. And so, I really use Coach Metcalf, and I use Coach St. John, and I can use Coach Carr in the RTC space, and Coach Fernando, and we've just, Coach Durbin, our strength coach, has done a great job. I mean, we have a lot of hands on them. And I think you have to really figure each one out, because, there's some days that I'll say, okay, you 3 guys, you're not wrestling today, get on the bike. And the other guys might scratch their head and go, why does this guy not have to wrestle today? But, those 3 guys might not need to wrestle that day. Probably learned a little bit of that from Coach Gable. I think Coach Gable was really good at reading guys and finding out this guy doesn't tick the same way this guy ticks. And not that you're right all the time, because I've screwed it up plenty of times too. But some guys need to wrestle more, some guys need to wrestle less. Sometimes they don't understand it, but it's really not their job to understand it. And I explained it to him. I said, I'm probably going to coach you differently than I'm going to coach this guy. So trust me. And trust is a 2-way street. We got to trust you, but you got to trust us.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this weekend's duels. Before we do, as I was looking at your schedule, looking at this weekend, I noticed how tough of a schedule you have. And we were talking about, Carr having maybe one of the toughest weights. I think it is. I mean, you talk about 3 NCAA champs, 1, 2, 3, and you talk about, when I was talking to him about not wrestling at the scuffle, and he said, it's crazy. People want to see me in O'Toole. They're still going to see it. Could happen 3 times this year. Could happen in the Missouri duel. It could happen at the conference weekend. It could happen in NCAAs. It's crazy. And I'm curious for you, because you've used the word negotiate when you talk about how hard your schedule is. How much of the negotiation is there for some of these duels to happen? And what do those negotiations look like?
You're asking negotiations with other schools to make those duels happen?
Well, yeah, it seems like when you're asked about your schedule, which you guys have such a tough schedule, And it's not easy to produce, it sounds like. It sounds like you got to negotiate with coaches to get what you want to get on the schedule.
Yeah, some coaches are easier to schedule with than others, and obviously we get I think 6 that we have to do. No, maybe 7 or 8 that we have to do in the Big 12. It's supposed to be 4 away and 4 home, so it's 8, I think, and then some teams 7 because we added Cal Baptist. But anyway, so those 7 or 8, depending on what we get dealt, that's 7 or 8 of our 16 dates. After that, we have the liberty. All the coaches have the liberty to do what you want to do. So you can pick and choose what you want to do. Now we have a Iowa State relationship, so that makes it 8 or 9. So we have 8 or 9 that we have to do. Everything else up to 16 is negotiable. Like we chose, Coach Bono called me a week after the NCAAs last year and explained the Florida thing. And I said, "Yeah, that sounds like fun. Iowa kids getting to go to Florida. Yeah, we'll take that deal."
Right.
And so you try to. And then you also have to do a good job building a home schedule for teams that are not in your conference. So it is kind of a pain in the butt. That's one of the hardest things to do is pull off a good schedule. And then there's some schools that just won't wrestle you, period, because they don't want. Like it's really hard to get Big Ten schools to wrestle you because their Big Ten schedule is tough, and they have. I think what do they get? They get 8 dates that they've got to satisfy too. So they're kind of in the same boat. The Big 12 and the Big 8 are in the same boat in terms of we get a certain amount of dual meets sent to us that we have to do, and the dates we got to wrestle them on. Well, the Big Ten's even more restricted. Not only do they get the 8, I think, that they've got to wrestle, or 10, but they also get the dates. We don't get the dates. We get the schools we have to wrestle, and then you got to figure out the coach when the heck you're going to wrestle each other. And that's I almost wish they just give us.
Do you guys pick dates? This might be a dumb question. Do you guys pick dates that are in your favor versus other dates? Is that what the discrepancy is when you're talking with coaches about like dates?
Yeah, it's hard. So we try to stick with the same weekend every year. Like we wrestle Oklahoma State one weekend, the last weekend in January, and then we go there the following weekend. So we're home one year, away one year. But that's not anything that's mandated by the Big 12. We just have to do that ourselves. If that answers your question.
Yeah, makes sense. So speaking of the schedule, back-to-back duels this weekend, both live. Everybody listening, they're both live on ESPN Plus. Wyoming Saturday, Arizona State, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. What's the perspective heading into this weekend? And I guess, Arizona State coming off that Cornell duel just 2 nights ago, they're looking to rebound. What is your perspective heading into the duels this weekend?
Well, we're pretty healthy, a lot healthier than we were when we wrestled Penn State in Cornell. But we got some guys that haven't been on the mat for a while either, so you always kind of wonder how they're gonna come back. They haven't competed for a month, but obviously Wyoming's a little bit down this year. We got to take care of them. We got to take care of business tomorrow at 1:00 with them, and then we get a chance with Arizona State. There should be some great matches in both dual meets, but especially against Arizona State. There'll be some great matches, and we're going to wrestle everybody. 25. We got 2 Hawaiians, and they're both hurt, and one of them's probably done for the year. Tarakina. I haven't told that to anybody yet, but what the heck? We're probably going to opt to do a surgery there and he's got a partial tear there. So we're going to make that decision real soon, but we're kind of leaning towards that. And then Kabanban's out for 6 more weeks. So we've got a couple other young guys that we're going to have to access for a while. But other than that, we got our starting other 9 guys in there. Redding's a little bit banged up. He kind of took a small lead over Ramazan Adesayaf right now, kind of just in the race for 133. So we're going to have both. We think we're going to have access to both of those guys this weekend. But other than that, we've got our 41 through heavyweight. We got our best soldier in the lineup.
I'm super excited. Is there any matchup you're excited for more than others? I know you probably got different reasons to be excited about all of them.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited about all of them. Obviously, that match with Paniro Johnson and Parco, that's probably 2 of the. You got the 3 and the 5, or the 3 and the 6 according to rankings, and that'll be a good one. I think I'm excited about our heavyweight Skyler. He's got a really good test in Colton Schultz. I think he's just done a really good job for us this year, and I think he can turn some heads this year. So
think the connection just broke. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, last question before I let you go. So, speaking of toughness, Carr's told me before how impressed he is that you get these guys like younger Bastida, these big gas tanks, Paniro, and you've referenced that in some, press conferences where, you want to get one more minute from David Carr, and gas tanks are very important. Selfishly, as a father of one, soon to be father of two, I would like a bigger gas tank. I know you're a father of three. So any advice or recommendations on getting a bigger gas tank?
You come to Ames and I'll give you the speaker and shoes.
I'm gonna have to take you up on that offer because
bring your running shoes. Yeah, we'll build you a gas tank. You can't build them in a week either. They take a little longer than a week.
That's what I've been told. There's no shortcuts, unfortunately.
No. David's done a good job. That's one of the things that's made David successful. He bought into the, some getting really uncomfortable. And I think his shape is the best it's ever been right now. The best it's ever been. I think he needed a notch more in December, but I think he got it in the last 2.5 weeks. So I'm excited to see him roll.
It's so exciting to have Carr and to not just have, sometimes a weight doesn't get the attention like you have like a Spencer Lee where the weight is almost just, it's Spencer versus everybody. But when you have a weight like 65, where you have 3 NCAA champs as the 1, 2, 3, and they all know it. They're not dumb. Shane knows that David and Keegan want a piece. Carr wants Keegan and Shane. Like, it's so cool to see. So getting into the conference duels here is going to be pretty exciting coming up, and this weekend should be a nice head start and all that. So awesome. That's all I got. Everybody listening, ESPN Plus, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, big duels. Coach, thank you for coming on today.
No, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll talk soon. See ya.
And the beat goes on.